Hello and welcome to the daily newscast within the United Country special by First Ukraine. You can find us at the frequencies available at our website first2a.com. Taras Chechko is working for you in the studio. Thank you for joining us. The situation in the cities of the ATO is constrained. In Luhansk, there is still no light, water and light zone. Stores sell the most needed food. In the city of Anthracite, which is temporarily controlled by terrorists, banks do not work. People are run out of cash. In the city hall, people are given one loaf of bread for 4 days. In the cities of Rovensky and Sverdlovsk, bandits rob mines, exporting coal from there. On the situation in the east, in the following story.
For the last night, terrorists violated the ceasefire regime for several times. They fired positions of Ukrainian army in Donetsk in the area of towns and villages Avdiivka, Donetske, Piski, Sartana, Nizhnya Krinka, in Luhansk region near settlements Smili Shestya, Komyshovacha, Zolote, Orlivske. National Security and Defense Council informs that militants conduct fire from mortars and guns, but they do not use hard artillery. We're sitting with baby for 3 days in cellar. Yesterday we came outside, took a shower, I cooked, so again bang bang, it was the grad somewhere. This video was made by inhabitants of Donetsk. They say explosions were heard in different districts of the city. City council reported that workers are renewing damaged gas pipes in Kirovsky, Kuybyshevo and Petrovsky districts. Near 3,000 of houses are without gas in the city. This is Russian tank is coming to the checkpoints of Ukrainian soldiers in Slavyano-Serbsk in Luhansk region. Militants suggested to soldiers to leave their positions. In other way, column will go through. OEC representatives met terrorists and agreed about distance keeping. Checkpoint was surrounded by 4 tanks, 4 personal carriers and 4 armored vehicles. They said that they will stay on these positions, which is in 500 meters from the checkpoint. After the leaving of OEC mission, they will in 100 meters.
Слева и справа находятся уже вражеские БТР.
National Security and Defense Council Ukrainian soldiers are keeping the defense and will not go back.
Т-72. У нас всього 5
I'm
одиниць
tankist.
Т-72,
We have only 5 tanks which do not work and could not be repaired. It was bought from Russia. Putin is responsible for this.
Який привезен з Росії, нехай відповідає за це. Товарищ Путін.
Russia is enlarging its military presence on the territory of occupied Crimea and strengthening its position near Taganrog. On the direction Mariupol-Taganrog in front of the part of the Donetsk border unit along all land part of the border, Russians are conducting the engineer work to equip and strengthen their military positions on Russian territory. National Security and Defense Council assures that on the south of Ukraine there are enough forces for equipment to stop the aggression of the enemy. Alina Oryshin, Victoria Zabian, First Ukraine.
Terrorists are firing the suburbs of Mariupol. Tonight, Ukrainian military were attacked several times. 3 combatants of Azov battalion and 3 soldiers were wounded. Today, President Poroshenko arrived to Mariupol. In Twitter, he wrote, after his visit was announced, terrorists fired Ukrainian military positions. The head of state has already met with the staff of Mariupol Steelworks. Also, he plans to meet with military troops and fighters who were brought out of captivity earlier. And Poroshenko said in the evening he will talk to Putin by phone. I have a great honor to represent you, our guest today. He is Andriy Kebkalo. He is a military expert. Hello.
Hello.
Let us start with the most pressing issue today. That is the negotiations that were held in Minsk between the OSCE, Ukraine, Russia, and the representatives of so-called People's Republics. Is this a real truth? Or probably there is a war, but in such a way how to hide some probable aspects of this war. So is it a real truth or is it a hidden war?
Well, I think at some stage we have to sit down and start talking, because otherwise it looks like we reached the dead end. So we have to negotiate. Otherwise this conflict will be endless, and we're going into winter. It will be very difficult for Ukrainian troops, and obviously will be very difficult for the people of DNR and LNR. So from my point of view, it's a good initiative. It's a good initiative. We have to talk, because that's a low intensity conflict, and we will drag it basically into next year, and that's going to be a disaster, at least for Ukraine, I think.
Is it the exact information that this war will last for some more months or even years, and that winter will be the time that the war will continue.
The winter it will be disaster, but yes, we can. I mean, the good example, Iraq or Afghanistan. That's a low-intensity conflict, exactly the same war we have now. But 2 years ago, when you say Iraq or Afghanistan, it was like, oh, that's far away. But now we have exactly the same conflict in Ukraine, and that's going to be a long war. So we have to stop it. Ceasefires is good. It's a good deal, and we have to start talking.
Let us compare the forces, the parties that participate in this conflict. That is the side of Ukraine and the Russian side. Yeah, and these militants from the Russian side. What is the difference between the preparation of Ukrainian soldiers and these militants from the side of Russia?
Well, I can't say it's side
I
of
mean,
Russia.
yeah.
It's like you said, People's Republic. The difference is huge because our military is working with conventional warfare doctrine, and people from Lugansk and Donetsk, it's unconventional warfare. And we don't have experience in unconventional warfare because since Ukrainian independence, Ukraine did not participate in any armed conflicts. So unconventional warfare or so-called irregular warfare, it's something new to us. We don't know how to deal with the situation. These groups are very small, very mobile, very professional. It's very difficult to fight them. It's very difficult to track them down. And obviously, that's a guerrilla warfare. And obviously, when it comes to the city, it is extremely difficult as well. We don't have experience. That's a problem of Ukrainian army.
So the question goes, we have to change the tactics.
Exactly.
And we have to change the way how we fight. Probably, as you have already mentioned, there is guerrilla war. Is it possible in Ukraine, having in mind that in history we had that experience, will it be effective today in this situation in the East?
I'll say yes, because we had the good experience. I mean, you have to remember Mozambique, for example, Angola, Vietnam. The Soviet troops participated in many wars, at least 20. But we need new, fresh people. We need new, fresh people with good experience. People from Iraq, people from Afghanistan, African background, professionals. And we have to build specialized training centers and share the experience. Because we don't have time, we're losing time now.
And what would be the difference between these guerrilla battalions, let us call this, and some volunteer battalions that conduct a conventional war? What will be the difference between these kinds of battalions? Can they cooperate and work at the same time?
Well, we're talking about different units. Battalions that you mentioned now, they are not trained to conduct guerrilla warfare or unconventional operations. It's just a battalion. We have to create a special forces troops, well-trained, well-equipped, and motivated. And these troops, they have to work behind the enemy line. It's two different topics, so we can't mix them together.
So we have to get some help from the outside. As far
Not
as I understand.
not necessarily from outside. We have professionals in Ukraine. We don't have to go to United States, France, or Great Britain. We have people here, but for some reason, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior, they don't utilize them in an appropriate way. I mean, we can't put a colonel with 25, 30 years of experience on the front line. We can put him as a commander of Special Forces unit, or we can put him in a training center. But we will sacrifice them now and throw him on the front line. I mean, yes, he's a fighting unit, but in such a way, we can call him a force multiplier. So that's one more soldier, nothing more, nothing less. But we need them somewhere else, not on the front line. Behind the enemy lines, yes, but not with infantry battalion.
I think it's clear. How to make the state understand that this war cannot be won without applying new methods of war, especially this one that you have already mentioned? How to persuade, how to make them understand that this is the necessary thing?
Well, we have to rebuild our armed forces. As I said, we have to create new units. We have to basically create something similar to American SOCOM, Special Operations Command. And we have to take, this is only my opinion, obviously, we have to take the best of the best from each branch. We have to take the best of the best from main intelligence directorate. We have to take someone from SBU. We have to take someone from Air Force and put them in a one unit, a size of battalion, for example, and obviously create a new training center. So some of them can be deployed, some of them will stay behind and train other people for deployment.
So let us list the basic things Ukraine should do for the following days, month, the steps, how to settle this conflict. What should be the main steps?
We have to separate the area of responsibilities, because we have conventional forces, we have battalions, and we have special forces as well. I think that the battalions will have to control the cities. As soon as the city was seized, the battalions will stay inside and control the city. It's something similar to the role of police. However, the main fight will have to go to conventional forces, the Ukrainian army. And obviously, as I mentioned before, special forces, they have to operate behind the enemy lines with support of Air Force. That will be an appropriate way to win this war.
What is your opinion about the fact that Russia, Putin, can go further, not stopping at these oblasts of Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk? Is it probable, in your opinion?
50-50.
50-50.
Exactly.
So we have to be prepared to everything.
It's not necessarily Putin himself. There is a lot of fighters in Donbass region, and they're not Russians. Chechens, people from Ossetia, from Bulgaria, Italians, many nationalities.
They have the main idea to separate these oblasts, these regions.
Some people, they came here for money as well.
For money.
Exactly. So they don't have a political agenda. They came here to get paid. So it's not necessarily up to Putin. That's a problem, because if Putin will be 100% in control of the situation, it's actually not too bad. But when there is no control, there is no centralized command, we may have problems, because some of these groups will decide, well, let's go to Kiev.
Then I just think that if Putin cannot control the situation in the east for now, then how can this conflict be settled and solved if we cannot negotiate with Russia, or from the side of Ukraine, Russia and the European representatives? If Russia cannot regulate this, so how can it be negotiated diplomatically, for example?
Well, we're negotiating, as far as I understand, we're negotiating with Russia.
Or just diplomatic means are useless.
I don't know what was the outcome of these negotiations. I've lost the track of the situation. But we're negotiating with Russia because we have Russian troops on the ground. Now, the question that you asked me is, what will happen if these guys will move forward? And we have to take all necessary measures now, not in 1 month or 2 months, in order to prevent this movement. So we have to reinforce our borders. We have to multiply people's presence on the borders of this. If these new republics will have independence, then that's going to be a new border, as far as I understand. So we have to reinforce this border and prevent people from another side to infiltrate central Ukraine. But we have to do something now, because we don't have time. We're running out of time.
Okay, it's clear. Probably that is the main thing that we wanted to hear and to tell our viewers, because the time is pressing. Sorry for interrupting you, but we had a guest in our studio. It was Andriy Kebkalo. He is a political expert. 15 Ukrainian military soldiers who had spent 2 weeks being held hostage by Donetsk separatists returned from captivity. They were met the night before in Dnipropetrovsk. On the release of combatants, General Volodymyr Ruban and Signer Ruslana Lizhichko were negotiating with the leaders of terrorists.
In the original state administration, there are dozens of people are waiting for released captives. Tatiana and her relatives meet her husband. Nobody have connection with him for 2 weeks. Oh, everything is all right. Tired a little bit. Despite of injury, man is good mood. He said that he was not sure that negotiations could agree with terrorists. I believe that, but I did not hope. Thank you very much. There is my life, there is my dear godmother and wife. I want to say to all parents, wives who know nothing about their guys, you have to search them, wait for them and believe, and everything will be all right.
Ждуть їх і вірять. І все буде хорошо.
Soldiers of 14th Territorial Battalion, 51st and 93rd Brigade, and also soldiers of Special Subunit Svitis had been released. The last of the subunit of police from Volyn region. Guys are distressed from destiny of their friends who are on the front line now. Bullets whistled, shells explosive. Death of my friends near. Now I'm afraid because I do not know what is happening with my units. Doctors Petrinas, Mikhailo, and one more injured soldier. After medical examination, doctors led those soldiers who have relatives in the Dnipropetrovsk region home. The rest of them are under the care of volunteers. Guys will get new equipment, help with renewing of forces, and psychological rehabilitation. According to the information from different sources, terrorists in Donbass have more than 700 Ukrainian soldiers captive. Yevhen Pavlenko, Alexander Shalbibin, Victoria Zabian, First Ukraine.
To release pilot Nadia Savchenko and film director Oleg Sentsov. To assist in this, Premier Arseniy Yatsenyuk asks Secretary General of the International Human Rights Organization Amnesty International, Salila Shetty. Now the Secretary General is in Ukraine. Then he will go to Russia. Let me recall, Nadia Savchenko has been detained in Voronezh since July. She is accused of involvement in the death of Russian journalists. Oleg Sentsov was detained by FSB in May after protests in Simferopol. He is suspected of terrorism. Today near Odessa, military trainings of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the United States Navy begin. Within 3 days, the military will conduct the operation of safe navigation in the crisis area, so was named this year's trainings. They will not enter the port of Odessa. Sea Breeze is multinational trainings. Their initiators are Ukraine and the USA, but every year other Black Sea countries join. This time ships of Spain, Canada, Romania and Turkey will participate. The Black Sea missile destroyer of the United States entered, and yesterday 2 more fighting frigates of NATO, Spanish and Canadian. Sailors of Georgia, Norway, Sweden and France will observe the trainings. I should add that this Sea Breeze is the 12th.
Trainings will be held according to the program of two-side cooperation between Ministries of Defense of Ukraine and USA. According to the plan on 2014, which is concerned by the presidential decree of 25th of March this year. Trainings will be held in framework of the program Partnership for Peace. That is why traditionally heads of governments were invited to participate in it. As follows, ships of Spain, Canada, Romania and Turkey will take part in trainings. Georgia, Norway, Switzerland and France directed their representatives and observers. Land trainings are not applicable.
The OSCE has sent to Ukraine 59 observers to monitor the ceasefire. This was informed by head of the organization Didier Burch-Halter. He called on all the parties to observe the ceasefire and constructively participate in further dialogue. The OSCE monitoring mission began its work in Ukraine in late March and will stay here for at least another 6 months.
Situation on the east of Ukraine stays very stressful, but there is a ceasefire and we were working on it and will be working together with International Contact Group and OSCE representative Heidi Taliavini. Month by month, we work to do this.
The European Union imposed sanctions against 3 Russian major oil public companies, Rosneft, Transneft and Gazpromneft. They are henceforth forbidden to raise capital and loans in the euro area. Despite the truth announced today, the EU should adopt new restrictions against Russia. This was reported by the press service of the European Commission, which exactly they promised to clarify tomorrow. However, the president of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, said new punitive measures may not be imposed if the ceasefire is observed.
New sanctions, it is a way to pressure to Russia to make it to begin peaceful negotiations. Do you remember, Iran? That was a similar situation. Russian economic suffers from sanctions and feels their recession because of them.
In Kharkiv, people are taught how to behave during the war. Today, Open University of the City Protection has started its work. Students will be taught to use weapons, to provide first aid, and to conduct guerrilla warfare. Citizens are sure that such knowledge is extremely useful, because from the city to the Russian border, 60 miles. More in the following story.
Work with AK-47, practice for those who did not serve in army or were there a long time ago. Inhabitants of Kharkiv studied how to gather the alarm bag and to do rescue breathing. From today, they become partisans. The units will be formed from Monday. We should not wait when the enemy is near our door. We have to do something preventive. That is why people subscribe. Near tables with tablet partisan movement, a big line. Several thousand of indifferent people came to learn how to defend yourself and your motherland. Soldiers and volunteer battalion instructors. As it was said by military experts, it is easy to capture Kharkiv. We should think about it earlier. Thank you for doing something at least now. Local men understand that Russian invasion is possible and they will have to attack the aggression back. They do not want to live like a neighbor Donbass. We need a bomb shelter somewhere to hide in cellars. The house should not be paneled because it could be destroyed as a card houses. Civilians would better go away from the city. We saw Donetsk and Lugansk what happened. Part of shelters are filled with shops, spa and companies for a long time. Part of them are free but cluttered. So volunteers will clean them next week. All usable cellars are pointed on the map. Микола Піддубний, Олександр Ушаков, Victoria Zabian, First Ukraine.
Ukrainian-American training's Sea Breeze has started in the northwestern part of the Black Sea. 12 ships take part in them, 7 of which are Ukrainian. Spain, Canada, Romania and Turkey joined Ukraine and the United States. They will be training, observe civilian ships, find out and detain violators. Military representatives of France, Sweden, Norway and Georgia will observe all maneuvers. At the same time, Russia is strengthening its military presence on Crimean Peninsula. Spokesperson of NSDC Andriy Lysenko said about this.
For the last several weeks, on the border with Kherson region, armed forces of Russia concentrated more than 64 tanks, near 100 of personal carriers and armored vehicles, several dozens of Hrad, Uragan, Buk systems, precision guided weapons and aircrafts. Now far away from the Chernomorsk settlement, there were made a military hospital. In the Black Sea, there are 7 big landing craft carriers of Black Sea Fleet and 1 big landing craft carrier in Baltic Fleet.
Ukrainian tourists sang Ukrainian anthem at Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow. As it was said by one of participants of the action, they were preparing in advance, wore national costumes vyshyvanka and took Ukrainian flags. They were afraid of the reaction of Russian police, but they ignored them. The passengers were behaving in a different way. Part of them applauded to them, and another part felt outrage. It was the United Country newscast by First Ukraine. You can find more details at our website first28.com. Taras Chechko was working for you in this studio. We wish you all only good news. Take care and goodbye.